The Detroit Tigers crushed the Minnesota Twins on Wednesday. We're going to talk about the good pitching and the good hitting to come out of that game. And then we're going to player preview Mason Englert's 2024. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Thursday, March 21st, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you all for tuning in. As always, happy Thursday to all. Almost done with the week. Happy start to the tournament. A lot of great basketball going to be played today and throughout the weekend. So wishing you all the best of luck in your brackets. I still feel really good about mine. Give me a day, maybe two, probably one. But I'm feeling really, really overly confident right now in mine. We are going to talk about the Tigers' 12-3 victory over the Minnesota Twins. Obviously, Casey Mize is going to be the biggest talking point in that game. He was a huge standout in it. But when you put up 12 runs, you got some offense to talk about as well for a change. So that's nice. We'll talk about that. There's a few players that I feel like maybe it's my own fault, have just gone under the radar in terms of how productive and good they've been swinging the stick, really all spring. So we're going to talk about a couple of those players that maybe have gone under the radar and have looked pretty solid, I think, and did really well in this game, obviously, as well. So a lot of notable performers in that one. We'll talk about that. And then in the second half of the show, we are going to player preview the 2024 season for Mason Englert, former Rule 5 pick, really struggled in the second half of last year after a decent start to the year. One glaring issue in his repertoire that, on the mound that we talked about a lot last year and is not going to be anything new if you were listening to the show last season in terms of what I want to see improved out of him. Will not start on the Major League roster, obviously, but still on the 40 at the time being. I think we only have 3 or 4 left. I decided I'm saving Javi for last, so that'll either actually today's already Thursday as you're listening to this, right? So it'll probably be beginning of next week. We'll probably do Javi, and he'll be the last player we do, and then opening day a week from today. There you go, a week from Thursday, a week from today. Super fun. We're almost there. I don't know how I'm even going to make it a week, honestly. Okay, we have baseball to talk about. 12-3 victory for the Detroit Tigers. They moved to 16-8 in spring training, which means little to nothing to me. But I know that, again, however you interpret spring training, you do you. That's the beautiful part about baseball and about sports in general. So 16-8, not bad. I'm not going to be upset that they're winning a lot. Definitely never a bad thing. The Twins fall to 8-15 as well. So let's start off with the offense. This was an offensive explosion after getting shut out on Tuesday. And I just want to hop around the lineup here and talk about some players that, again, whether it's my own fault or just the fan base's perspective of them in general and just like not talking about it a lot, there are some players that I think have gone under the radar in the spring. Matt Vierling had a home run to the opposite field in this one, so completely just bashing all over my player breakdown of him when I said I wanted him to lift and pull the ball more. Found some power going the opposite direction. I want to start off by saying, in this, I don't know what was going on, but it was windy. Okay, the ball was carrying in this baseball game, but not going to take away from anybody at all. Both teams played in the same environment at the end of the day. Vierling goes 2 for 2 with the homer and also a walk. He started off slow and I think has really adjusted and looked a lot better. Early in the spring, it was very clear that he was trying out new mechanics, right? And I just mean, like, when you watched him, it was very obvious he was trying something new. Even if you didn't know, like, that, if you didn't notice the difference, rather, between, last season and this season in terms of, like, where his hands are and stuff, it was just very noticeable that he looked a little bit awkward or slower in there at times. And I think that that's starting to go away, which is great. The whole goal is to obviously be ready a week from now for opening day. And I think that even aside from the results that have come with it, I think that he's looked a lot sharper in the batter's box the last week and a half. Zach McKinstry is a guy, he goes 2 for 3 in this ball game. He is going into this game, he had good spring numbers. And now they're, he's pushing 1,000 OPS. Obviously, that's not going to stick. But the thing that made Zach McKinstry so great in the month of May was he walked more than anybody not named Juan Soto in the entire game of baseball in the month of May last year. And so earlier in the spring, that was kind of what he was doing. He was starting to draw some more walks, get back into the groove and the swing of things in that department. And it's really also followed up then with his last few outings hitting the ball pretty hard. Even his out in this one was a long fly ball as well. So yeah, I think he's looked really good. He's going to make the team. I fully expect him to be one of these utility guys. He's also out of options. So that kind of plays into it, I guess, a little bit. But even if he had him, I would expect him to be, I think this coaching staff likes him a lot. And we've talked about that. We did his player breakdown already and whatnot. But yeah, he's had a really solid spring. Bly Madris, a guy, he's had a really solid spring. I know that everybody kind of rolls their eyes. Not everybody. There's a group of the fan base that kind of rolls their eyes and moans whenever Scott Harris makes another waiver claim or picks somebody up for super cheap. And it's just very clearly organizational depth. But that's kind of how you build a healthy organization. The depth matters as well. Obviously, we want to see more top end talent here, but the depth performing as well as a lot of them have in spring training, I think is a healthy sign, no less. Josh Crouch, nice to see him take a ball 900 feet. Shout out Josh Crouch, man. Guy I really liked a couple of years ago and just kind of took I don't want to say a step back, but kind of plateaued a little bit last year. Now Carson Kelly, one of the last people I want to talk about offensively before we move on to pitching, has had a very sneaky, solid spring for the Detroit Tigers. Had a home run in this game, ended up going 1 for 4. But he's had really good spring numbers and was a really highly regarded young catcher at one point. And that has unfortunately worn off due to injury and then following the injury, lack of production where, in Arizona the last few years, and he didn't hit very well for the Tigers last season. And they kept him around because the pitching staff likes him and the pitching coaches like him. And he calls a good game and he's a really, really solid defensive catcher. But if they can, I don't even need league average OPS, right? I'm not even asking for an 100 OPS plus WRC plus whatever. If he can even be just serviceable, if he can not be a guy that you look at and you go, well, that's probably an automatic out, right? If you have a high 600s OPS next season out of Carson Kelly, that's a massive win. And that might be the difference of a win or two, when the season is all said and done. It would be a huge get out of backup catcher, given the offense that A, Rodgers provided last year, and B, is somewhat expected to provide in the bottom of the lineup this season. So that would be a really nice thing to see out of Carson Kelly. And yeah, he's had a really, really solid spring. So just wanted to give him his flowers as well. I think just one or two more players to talk about, and then we'll move on to Casey Mize and the story of this ball game. We will do all of that right after this. Fire TV is our destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing television and provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's the opening weekend for baseball a week from today or the college basketball tournament today, well, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created a Fire TV Channels app to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On, first and foremost, but also most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV Channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. So check out Fire TV Channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV Channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/Fire TV. I also got to talk to y'all about our friends over at FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game in the tourney. Happy tourney opening day to all of those who celebrate. Whether you're betting on the big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win the whole thing. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back tomorrow talking about some more spring training ball, doing more player previews. And then next week, we start season preview stuff. We start season preview stuff and have a regular season game. Next week, it's Thursday. Next week, we have a regular season game. So pumped. Let's talk about spring training now. We're still in spring. We still got a few games left to go. Obviously, the Tigers win 12-3 against the Minnesota Twins. Only other offensive performances I want to talk about. Colt Keith went 1 for 3 with a walk. The walk was a really impressive at bat, I thought, in terms of working the count. He was 0-2, then fouled off a strike, then worked the count full, and then drew a walk. Really impressive to see there. The one thing that I've kind of noticed throughout the spring is just, and it was noticeable in that specific plate appearance, and somebody, I can't remember who, unfortunately, very unprofessional of me, on Twitter pointed it out, but there was a couple of fastballs over the heart of the plate that ideally you would like him to hit, and the fact that he was able to work the count and still get on base is great. But I think at his best, you want him doing, obviously, damage on those fastballs that are over the heart of the plate. So something to keep an eye on. I think he's using spring. That's something I've noticed really since the beginning of spring training with especially elevated heat, but really just fastballs in general. I think that's something, he's trying to get the timing down of these major league fastballs that he is seeing consistently now. So hopefully that's something that doesn't take too much adjusting and we're not waiting for like June for him to really excel against fastballs. But we've seen that in progression with a lot of prospects, if not all prospects to some extent. So something to keep an eye out for there, but really good plate appearance there to draw the walk anyway and still got a knock in this game as well. I think that's pretty much it. Ryan Kreidler with a great game defensively and offensively. His spring numbers are now absolutely through the roof, and he's playing plus defense. We do see Ryan Kreidler in Detroit this season, just not on opening day. Let's talk about the pitching. It's always weird when you have, like, the Detroit Tigers the last 3 years. The issue has been offense. Well, there's been a lot of issues, but offense has been the cause for concern in a lot of those, specifically 2022 and then last year. My point is, it's always interesting when you have a 12-run game and the story of the game is probably still the pitching, just because 12-run games haven't come that often for the Tigers over the years. But Casey Mize, 4 2/3, 2 hits, no earned runs, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. Last 2 batters that he faced before getting pulled, swinging strikeout and a looking strikeout, and 2 of the best fastballs I think he has ever thrown in his entire life. And I genuinely believe that and mean that. The reason why this is such an incredibly awesome and optimism-inducing performance is because of the fastball. And there's some stuff I still want him to work on, which we'll get through in a second. And I'm sure he's actively still working on all of this. Well, not I'm sure. Obviously, I'm sure that's his job. And he's a very, very competitive dude. But there was a fastball to Willie Castro up and away that he got a swinging strike on that was not just under 97 miles an hour. Right? It's like 96.7 or 96.8 miles an hour. And then the looking strike, low and away on the black to Margot, 97.7 miles an hour. If you round up, if you round period, if you just round to the nearest mile an hour, that pitch was 98. Incredibly optimistic about those numbers. The fastball averaged just a tick under 95 on the outing, and he ended up throwing 60 pitches. And the fact that at the 60 pitch mark, beyond that, he was hitting 90, again, 96 and 97, 98 miles an hour is just such a brilliant sign. So wanted to give him his flowers there for sure. That was a 70 pitch outing, actually, not 60. So even by, 65, 66, 70 pitch mark, still hitting that velocity, the highest velocity had hit all game, is a really, really good sign. Want to see some improvement on command of the secondary stuff through the splitter well, I thought, in this game. But the biggest thing was early on, especially, was continuously spiking his breaking stuff in the dirt, low and away to righties. And obviously that's something that you want him to even out, level out, and get more over the heart of the plate in the regular season. But I still think this is an incredibly good sign. This is going to bring a lot of optimism, as if there wasn't already enough about how his spring has gone. And hitting 70 pitches, keeping the velo high, all 70 pitches, getting some strikeouts to end the outing, et cetera, et cetera. Certainly some command stuff that needs to be worked out, right? 70 pitches in less than 5 innings isn't the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Optimal? That's not even the word, but sure. It isn't efficient. Boom. Isn't the most efficient outing in the world, obviously. But I think that you watch this and you watch how he looked, and you can get pretty excited about it. So good to see that from Casey Mize. Also want to talk really quickly before we move on to Mason Englert. Alex Faedo and Joey Wentz both pitched in this ballgame, which I think is super interesting. You have two dudes who are essentially single-handedly battling each other for the last bullpen spot. Both pitch in the same game, and I thought both looked pretty darn good. Alex Faedo, 1 1/3 of perfect ball with a strikeout. His ERA is 1.64 in spring. And then Joey Wentz goes just under 2 innings, 1 2/3, 1 hit, 1 run, no walks, 2 strikeouts. The only hit he gave up was a solo shot, a fastball just right down the middle. When I tell you right down the middle, I mean that thing was as middle as you're going to see. So very easy to drive, obviously, against Major League hitting. But I thought that the fastball looked good in this outing outside of that one pitch. Obviously, that thing was up to 96 miles an hour relatively consistently. I think he's going to make the team. 2.77 ERA in the spring, whatever that's worth to you. But I think more importantly than the ERA in spring training, they're looking at the stuff and they're thinking this will play. That this will play in a big way. So, and then lastly, Miguel Diaz pitched, got rocked a little bit. I think my king is probably not going to be a part of the Tigers organization here in about a week's time, and that makes me sad. So I'm not going to think about it. We'll talk about it when it becomes official. But just because he's out of options, I think they're going to have to put him on waivers, and I would imagine another team is going to pick him up, unfortunately. But we can hope that they won't, because I love Miguel Diaz. Let's talk Mason Englert. All right, we will do that right after this. Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. So get in on the excitement with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, college basketball entries, and more on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Something that I've found a lot of joy in doing this season is because you pick more or less on stats for players, right? So obviously the college and the tournament and whatnot is here, but in the NBA, Jalen Duren, I love just taking more on Duren rebounds. It's 12.5 for Wednesday night's game. Obviously, as you're listening to this, that game will already have passed. But something that I really enjoy. And then also Tyrese Halliburton assists, another guy really fond of the more on Tyrese Halliburton assists, guy that has been absolutely. I'm glad he's healthy again as well. So get in on all of the action and join the fun here. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you can get a first deposit match up to $100. Locked On MLB, first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We are talking about Mason Englert today. We finished the spring training rundown there. Had a little bit more to talk about than usual because it was really good pitching and hitting for a change. Saw both of those things come together, and it was a pretty good game to talk about there, despite it still being a spring game. I just want regular season baseball. I cannot wait to just spend an entire show over analyzing one game. Like I can't wait for, and obviously we have different, bigger picture conversations throughout the year as well. But I cannot wait to just talk about games that matter. Oh my goodness, I cannot wait for it. I don't know how I'm going to last even a week. March Madness will help. The tournament will help for sure. Okay, so let's talk Mason Englert. Last season for the Detroit Tigers had a 5.46 ERA in 56 innings pitched. Obviously got hurt there at the end of the year and still put up over 55 innings pitched for the team. Appeared in 31 games, so was getting a lot of multi-inning outings as well. Like I said, 5.46 ERA. All of the expected numbers are honestly even higher, except for xFIP, I guess, is lower, but FIP higher, expected ERA higher, right? There are even a lot of stats that are saying his ERA was even lower than it probably should have been. The K per nine, only 6.59. The walk per nine, 2.73 is pretty solid. But the most alarming number here is obviously the home run per nine being 1.93. Against lefties, lefties had a 983 OPS against him and had a 337 batting average. Righties, however, 796, still not great, still well over league average, obviously, but obviously significantly better than how he fared against lefties. So, I mean, we can break it down. I think everyone's pretty well aware of what Englert was last season. We don't have to go too in depth. He gave up a lot of hard contact. He did not miss bats. He didn't walk anybody, which I think the front office and the coaching staff appreciated, and is why he lasted on the roster throughout most of the year. Also, the fact that he was a Rule 5 pick, right? You have to keep him throughout the season, X amount of games and or weeks he has to be on the roster, assuming health, or else he would have gone back to his original organization. So I think that's why they held on to him. They're like, well, he's already played this long. We took him in the Rule 5. They obviously see something that they like in him, in his game. And we'll talk about, the things that he does do right here in a second. And if they were to give up on him, they would have completely removed him from the organization. Now, I will also say that I don't think he's a lock to make it through the entire year on the 40. If we don't see improvements from him this year, this is a guy who very well could get put on waivers on some point. And if he's not picked up, then there you go. Beautiful. He stays in the organization. You get to keep working with him, keep trying to get him to improve in certain areas. Right. He's still only 24 years old right now. Like, it's not like this is just a lost cause because of the poor, second half he had last year. So if you really liked him enough to roster him throughout the whole year last year, then if you can clear him through waivers at some point, you can still work with him and try to get him back to a point where you, I don't know, maybe down the road, put him back or something. But I think that this year he's going to be bullpen depth for sure. I would be shocked if he matched the 56 innings that he put up last season. I would be really, really surprised if that was matched. I think that, if that were to happen, something has gone really horribly wrong with the injury situation for this team. If Englert eclipses 50 innings again, he will assuredly start off the season in AAA. This year already has been optioned, obviously, earlier in spring training. So now that we're done talking about like his withstanding on the roster and stuff, we'll talk about him, the pitcher. And again, this isn't a super long breakdown because it's one glaring issue that he has is just he doesn't have a major league caliber fastball right now. And I'm sure that that's something that they have been working on with him since they brought him in. And I think that the reason they kept him on the roster was because the other stuff in his repertoire, they do like. And if they can just get a decent fastball out of him, I think he could be a long reliever somewhere down the road. But that is a huge if, right? That is very far from a guarantee. Improving your fastball to be, as poor as his was last year to being like an even semi-legitimate pitch at the major league level is a really, really tall ask. So, last season had a -7 run value on his four-seam fastball, a 672 slug against the four-seam fastball, and the expected slug was even significantly higher than that at 734. That's like Barry Bonds, Babe Ruth. So really, really just struggled with the fastball. When it comes to the other pitches, the numbers weren't great on any of the pitches he threw, as we saw, right? I mean, he had, a 5.5 ERA. That's not the most surprising thing in the world, but the changeup I actually liked. I just think that again, it all goes back to your secondary pitches don't matter. It doesn't matter how good they are if you can't establish a fastball. Joey Wentz, the list goes on. We could have a laundry list of players who have really good secondary stuff, but because they can't establish their fastball at the major league level, it doesn't matter, right? And so I actually really like his changeup, but the numbers on it are not good last season because no one was threatened by, okay, well, if I don't sit on the changeup, he'll blow the fastball by me. No, I can just adjust mid-flight and still hit no matter what he's throwing because I don't respect that pitch specifically. You're the pitch you throw the most and the pitch that is supposed to be the bread and butter has to be established. And a changeup especially, right? A slider you can kind of, especially if it's a righty-righty platoon or lefty-lefty, right? Like you can kind of, like Andrew Vasquez just only throws sliders and he has made, carved out a fine professional career for himself. Changeup, you can't really do that. You can't just only throw changeups, right? Like you have to pair a changeup with a good fastball for the changeup to be a change up, right? You're not changing anything up if your fastball isn't good. So I probably already spent too much time talking about it, but I don't hate the changeup that he has. I think it actually has the potential to be a pretty good pitch. The slider got a little flat at times, but also at a 30% whiff rate on the season. That's not awful, right? Again, it all comes down to the fact that he just doesn't have a major league fastball right now. So he'll go down to Toledo. He'll work on that. If there is some development, they make a couple of tweaks and all of a sudden he's throwing 93, 94, and the thing has more spin and maybe they get some more extension out of him as well, et cetera, all these other things, then maybe he's a guy that you could see raise on the ladder in terms of, what number of call in like priority standing you are at when relievers get hurt. The first call is going to be Faedo, and then, the next call. I think that he could be a guy that if the fastball improves, could work his way up. But this is all an if conversation, right? There are some people that are even rolling their eyes and they're like, I didn't see anything last year that would lead me to believe that he was going to be able to do that this season. Fine, right? Again, fair enough. I'm not sure I did either, but with what we have seen this coaching staff able to do to certain players, I'm not going to put anything past them. And Englert seems like a really, really, really great dude that worked really hard last year, and that's gotta be a tough situation when you're continued. Him and Wentz both just rolled out there because they don't really have any other options, even though you've been struggling and whatnot. So he was a Rule 5 pick. He skipped levels to be on a major league roster. Now he can probably go back to where he should be in his development. And who knows, maybe in a couple of years, they'll develop him and he will work hard enough to work his way back into that conversation. But for now, I don't expect too many innings out of him. If the fastball doesn't get better, he's certainly a DFA candidate. But I think that is my key, is just how much better can your fastball get? Okay. Hoping that he can improve it because, again, a super easy guy to root for. Great human being by all accounts. Really, really, really great story that that I resonate with a lot. And yeah, I wish the dude nothing but the best. So I think that's everything. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back tomorrow. All right. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever streaming channel, 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. The first of its kind. It's now also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. All right. Locked On Sports Today, Locked On Tigers. We ball. See you tomorrow. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.